everyone, it's Sevy. Weapons from gacha pulls are great and all, but I wouldn't easily dismiss free and craftable weapons, which can be great value and solid options on the right characters. You'll need some farming time and some billet RNG to get them, but at least you won't need to spend your valuable primo gems. That's why in this video, I want to discuss Fontaine's new free-to-play friendly weapons to help you get a sense of how good these weapons are, which characters might appreciate them a lot, and how they compare to their other craftable peers. As we go along, let me know if any of these weapons strike your fancy and who you might build one for. Anyway, let's dive right in. Before checking out the Fontaine Smithy's recommendations, let's talk about what the Fishing Association has got for us. They've gone from making you fish for fish to fishing for a pipe? Despite its looks, the Fleuve Cendre Ferryman makes for a decent ER weapon through its ER substat and additional ER buff from the passive. At R5, that's a whopping 78% total ER. It really reminds me of Festering Desire, which might as well be ancient at this point. So this pipe comes around as a nice alternative for those who weren't able to get the Festering Desire and is obviously great for ER-hungry units. While it's a nice addition to our choice of ER swords, Favonius and Sacrificial Swords will still be on top for their extra particles, which help not just the user, but the entire team's energy management as well. Plus, their full ER substats will also stay constant and don't need to be re-triggered. But if you have neither, or you don't want to displace them from their current users, then, assuming you enjoy fishing and pipe combat, Fleuvre is gonna be a nice pickup. Before we move on to the craftable weapons, let's discuss the new HP-related mechanic called Bond of Life, which some of these weapons are now implementing. This bond absorbs healing effects that a character receives, and once it's healed fully, the Bond of Life gets cleared and activates the weapon's corresponding effect. That's the official description of how the mechanic works, so let's demo it for clarity. The Bond of Life assumes a set percent of the equipped character's max HP. For the sword, Finale of the Deep, it uses 25% max HP. To trigger the Bond of Life, Traveler will use her skill, and you can see this red segment on her HP bar indicating the Bond of Life. And yes, I know this segment doesn't look like 25% of her max HP. It's a bit deceptive, but it actually is 25% to start with, so just note the visual disparity. To clear the Bond of Life, you just need to heal the character. And you can see that before the healing actually goes to the character's HP bar, it removes the Bond of Life first. Take note as well that the Bond of Life can actually stack if you reactivate it before clearing it. Basically, you'll really want to make sure you have a means of healing when using a weapon with Bond of Life in order to unlock the maximum potential of any weapon with this mechanic. Now that we've clarified that, let's move on to the actual craftable weapons. First off is the sword, Finale of the Deep. It comes with 565 base attack, a 27.6% attack substat, a passive that gives 12% attack after using the skill at R1, and a flat attack bonus based on the Bond of Life that gets cleared. The high base attack and attack bonuses make this a really good stat stick. If your character doesn't have use for the EM that Iron Sting gives, or the physical damage that Prototype Ranker gives, then Finale of the Deep becomes a best craftable option for damage, competing with a fellow craftable, the Amenoma Kageuchi. The most important differences between these are the base attack and energy refunding mechanic of Amenoma. Despite having a higher attack substat, Amenoma has a noticeably lower base attack than the Finale. This makes the Amenoma potentially suffer from diminishing returns faster with attack percent, since that's a lower base attack to multiply, unlike the Deep's higher base attack. The Amenoma does have great value if your character needs the energy gain to ensure that you can maintain consistent burst uptime and rotations, and to cover ER needs if you're unable to get sufficient ER stats or battery particles. But if that's already excessive energy gain leading to wasted ER, then you might as well just go for more attack. So yeah, the Finale is pretty much straightforward in that it gives a ton of attack from both its stats and passive. Just ensure that your character has a means of healing in order to clear that Bond of Life effect. Next up is the Tidal Shadow Claymore. It has 510 base attack, 41.3% attack substat, and it doesn't have a Bond of Life mechanic, but it still requires the user to be healed in order to gain a 24% attack bonus at R1, and this includes overhealing. This lasts for 8 seconds and can be triggered even when the character is off field. This Claymore's closest competitor is the Prototype Archaic, which has a slightly higher base attack but lower attack percent substat. Whichever outputs more damage will depend on whether you can consistently proc the Tidal Shadow's passive, and in that case it will generally beat Prototype Archaic. The Tidal Shadow's refinements also have more value compared to prototype Archaics. At R5, Tidal Shadow now gives a huge 48% attack buff. Compare that to the R5 prototype Archaic, which only increases the multiplier of the physical damage instance it deals every 15 seconds. For example, an R5 Tidal Shadow on Beidou in an Aggravate team can deal about 11% more damage than the R5 prototype. On Eula, Tidal Shadow can be about 8% better. Again, this all assumes that the unit is getting healed to trigger the passive. If not, prototype Archaic will be the better choice, like if you depend on shields or damage reduction effects instead. You could also just go with a prototype Archaic if you want to avoid being stuck with a healing condition for more flexibility, but otherwise, the Tidal Shadow is a solid craftable attack stat stick with good value in its refinements. For the polearm, Fontaine brings us the first 4-star HP polearm with a 27.6% HP substat. What's funny is that if HP is what you need, then Black Tassel still beats it with 46.9% HP substat. But Rightful Reward has the benefit of generating flat energy when the user gets healed. There are still polearm users that would just straight up prefer the Black Tassel for its meteor HP substat, such as Zhongli and Yao Yao, where you can be not too concerned about their burst costs. But if you do want to help Yao Yao's energy generation a bit while having more HP, then at least Rightful Reward presents a new option. And as a healer herself, Yao Yao should have no problem activating the passive. A similar case would be Mika, but because of his energy issues, Favonius is still his better default option. Another HP loving unit that comes to mind is Thoma, who would also really appreciate the energy generation, but he comes with some considerations as well, since 1. If Thoma is acting as your shielder, you may not have a team healer anymore, and 2. Thoma's popularly used as a burgeon trigger since Dendro came out, in which case Kitane Spear is already there for its EM substat and energy passive. You can technically craft this for Hu Tao if you don't already own Black Tassel, White Tassel, or even Dragon's Bane, but if you do so, it should be replaced as soon as you get any other viable weapon for her. At least this becomes a new weapon choice for Candace, who has HP scaling attributes and relies on her burst a lot, so the additional energy will be helpful for her. But out of the new craftable weapons, this one probably has the least additional value, but maybe Fontaine will release a character that can appreciate this Rightful Reward much more. Now we have the Catalyst Flowing Purity. This weapon comes with 565 base attack, 27.6% attack substat, and a passive that gives an initial elemental damage bonus plus more after clearing the Bond of Life. Its stats and effects look very similar to Mappa Mare, which gives an elemental damage bonus from triggering reactions. The main difference is that Mappa Mare has an EM substat instead of attack. As such, Flowing Purity is the clear winner for Catalyst users that have no need for EM, like Ningguang, Mono Pyroclee, or just mono-element carries in general. But for those that make good use of both EM and attack, which is a lot of Catalyst users, it's going to come down to how reliably you'll be able to clear the Bond of Life and how much damage bonus you'll actually gain considering the user's max HP. It's still about as good as Mappa Mare, even if you don't get much out of the HP-related passive, and better if you do. But if you've already invested in a Mappa Mare and are hesitant to spend a billet, you can really just stick with what you have. The other comparison that might come to mind is against Dodoko Tails, an event weapon from way back. If you were never able to get it and you really want a free-to-play attack percent weapon, then Flowing Purity is your best bet. And even if you already have it, Flowing Purity promises a more universal elemental damage bonus rather than just normal and charged attack bonuses. Based on how much ER your character needs, they may still consider the Sumeru or Inazuma catalysts more, or even the event weapon Oathsworn Eye if you were able to get it. But Flowing Purity is looking to be a great free-to-play catalyst overall for damage, especially if you can use its passive well. Last, we have the bow, Song of Stillness. It comes with 510 base attack, a 41.3% attack substat, and a general 16% damage increase at R1 when the user gets healed. Its predecessors, the Hamayumi and Prototype Crescent, are both already strong craftables, so when might you prefer one over the other? Prototype Crescent generally has quite high damage potential since it gives so much attack percent when you can trigger its passive, but doing so requires hitting an enemy weak point. Unfortunately, we do get into combat situations where either the enemy doesn't actually have a weak point, or we just have skill issue with aiming. In those cases, when you're not even able to trigger Crescent's passive, Song of Stillness just becomes a more convenient and better option. What about versus Hamayumi? One of Hamayumi's best users is Melt Ganyu, and she's able to keep the passive at full since in that team comp and setup, she doesn't use her burst. In this case, you'd pretty much just want to stick with Hamayumi. But for more general situations, especially in cases where the unit's damage isn't heavily skewed into their normal or charged ranged attacks, Song of Stillness is a solid generalist free-to-play bow for anyone as long as there's healing. And that's it for this review of Fontaine's new free-to-play weapons. Their passives just revolve around getting healed, which isn't surprising since Fontaine's new characters so far have consistently had HP consuming and restoring mechanics. Also, they're pretty stylish too. Again, let me know in the comments if you're gonna be building any of these new weapons. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all soon. Take care!